Alright guys, how we doing? So right off the bat, as you can see, I have my new mic set up, all ready to go and everything right here. Thank you very much for my patrons for helping me pay for this, because I mean, it's fucking awesome. And I hope you guys can hear the difference in the richness of my voice now that I have done this. I mean, to be honest, I don't have a huge idea what I'm doing yet, because I'm still kind of new to this. I mean, so for a start, it does seem like it's a bit in a way. Hopefully that's not too annoying for you guys. I mean, I don't really know a better way to do it with my current setup. If it is annoying, I'll try and figure out a way it's less kind of visible somewhat. Maybe it'll be easier with my setup at uni when I go there. We'll see. Another thing though, with the kind of like calibration of the mic and doing all the kind of settings, I haven't played around with those a huge amount. I think I've got a pretty good thing that I'm going for, but I think over time it's going to improve slightly more. But hopefully what I've got going now is a pretty good thing. I think it is, at least. But anyway, I realize it's been a few weeks since I made a video, so sorry about that. I've been on summer holiday, and as well as that, I've been working. So not only is my perception of time kind of being a bit fucked because I've been on summer holiday a bit. For some reason I had in my head it'd only been like over a week since I've really made a video, but no, it's been like 3 weeks, almost a month, which is quite bad, so I'm sorry about that. And then at work I just didn't have time, but of course I'm done with that now, so now I do have time, so we make videos. I've got loads of videos coming, so that's all good. But anyway, enough with introductions and whatever else bullshit. Let's get into the video. So today we're talking about labor vouchers. Now I have to make this video because it just seems that no one really gets labor vouchers. So we're gonna go through them, we're gonna have some fun, and hopefully we'll come out being more knowledgeable on labor vouchers. That's the goal here. Now, I will say right off the bat that if you want a description of labor vouchers from the man himself, Karl Marx, then just give Critique of the Go program a read. I can't recommend this enough, because it's just, he goes over labor vouchers, how they'd work, and he goes over a bunch of other stuff too about socialism. It's really short, so just read it, go. Now, first off, let's just talk about some real quick context about what we're talking with here. Now, there are two stages of communism: lower phase communism, often referred to as socialism, and higher phase communism. Now, in the higher phase communism, there's resource abundance, there's the principle and action of from each according to their ability to each according to their need kind of thing, where you give into society what you can and you take out of society what you need. The utopia, as it were. But before we reach that stage in societal development, there's lower phase communism, which, as Marx puts it, as it's emerged out of the capitalist society rather than developed on its own foundations, it is still stamped with the birthmarks of capitalist society. You can't go directly to that utopia, is what Marx is saying. You need an intermediate step, and especially, you know, for one, for like kind of cultural and behavioral differences to kind of shift to the new society, and two, for resource abundance to really kick in and to allow those productive forces to flourish, as right now they're being hindered under capitalism. So during this stage, as society naturally develops into higher phase communism, to essentially mediate scarce resources and luxuries, you have labor vouchers. Now, the very first thing that pops into most people's minds when they hear labor vouchers aren't that just money?
Because some people spend their labor vouchers on them and some others don't.
How is this different from money?
Yes.
The best way to think about labor vouchers is as a kind of certificate, proof that labor has been done, rather than any kind of medium of exchange. The actual reason they're not currency is quite simple. They don't circulate. They're destroyed on use, so therefore they don't accumulate. Again, they're just certificates. They're like goddamn vouchers you can buy at clothes shops or whatever. I mean, you know, hence the name labor vouchers. So how exactly do these work in the socialist society? Well, when someone carries out social labor, that being labor that society needs and is useful to society, they receive, in exchange for that labor, the labor vouchers to show they've actually done it. They can then trade in this certificate to attain any kind of luxury they may need that is equal to the labor that they've done. So just for an example, let's say you spend 1 hour producing 10 chairs, and it also takes 30 minutes to produce 1 table. Well, in exchange for that 1 hour of chair making, you could take out from society's stock 2 tables. It's also worth mentioning that socially necessary labor time applies here as well. If you happen to make 20 chairs in 1 hour, well then you still don't get only 2 tables out. You can take out 4 tables if you want, because it's the actual output of labor that you're measuring this by. If you manage to produce more in the same time, then yeah, good for you. Of course, I kind of do have to ask at that point, why do you have 4 tables? Really though, to sum it up, I think this quote from Marx in Critique of the Government Program really puts it nicely, kind of, frames the whole thing properly. The worker receives a certificate from society that he has furnished such and such an amount of labor after deducting his labor from the common fund, and with the certificate he draws from the social stock of means of consumption, that being goods, as much as the same amount as the labor costs. The same amount of labor which he has given to society in one form, he receives back in another. And this is also why labor vouchers are distinct from just wages. They're a direct exchange in labor. While wages, on the other hand, are set by market forces, supply and demand, cost of production. They're influenced by outside forces instead of the actual labor that you're done, and in fact, you'll get the same wage regardless of how much labor you do in one day. However, it's worth mentioning that this direct exchange of labor doesn't take its full form in just goods. Marx says that the worker receives back from society what he puts into it. However, you need to keep in mind what the worker's receiving back from society isn't purely luxuries and goods. Deductions are made from the total amount that the worker can take out in goods alone with their labor vouchers, kind of split into 2 parts. The first part is more out of necessity, so they deal with putting aside resources to cover used up raw materials and account for wear and tear in tools and machinery, things like that, accounting for future expansion and production, just again, necessities that you need to keep the actual production running. The latter is more about funding commonly used services for the whole of society. You see, the thing is, like I said, not everything you get back with your labor will manifest itself in the form of goods. Things like public buildings, roads, education, healthcare, these are all things that you take advantage of in society, that everyone needs to take advantage of in society, yet they all take resources to fund and upkeep. Therefore, again, deductions are made from the amount of goods that you can take out of these labor vouchers just to fund these services. You can kind of think of it like a tax today, but of course these services are still being run by the workers themselves as opposed to any kind of government. However, in this newly developing society, in the lower phase of communism, Marx still admits that there are defects in this direct exchange of labor. You see, because the thing is, not everybody would actually receive the exact same amount for the exact same labor output. If you and one other guy happen to produce the exact same amount in one day, but the other guy happens to have 4 children at home, that guy probably needs a few more resources than you do in order to keep up his family, because of course the children aren't going to be laboring, I hope at least. So, of course, this means that this guy would in turn receive more goods and more food and whatever, but at the same time though, this is only going to fund his children that he's decided to have. And these defects are actually, in the whole grand scheme of things, they're very, very small inequalities that, again, as the new society develops, would iron themselves out naturally. I mean though, this is of course we're not implementing full communal parenting as strictly instructed by Marx to destroy the family at any costs. The point is though, there may be small defects here and there in this direct exchange of labor between individuals just to cover different needs, but again, these are going to be negligible, and either way, the same principle still holds that the more you work, the more you can take out in luxuries, and that's still a lot better than anything you're getting under capitalism. Eventually though, as the new society develops, labor vouchers would lose all meaning, and people would start to freely give and take to society as they need. The barriers between what is yours personally and is commonly owned would be heavily blurred, maybe even to the point where we all start using communal toothbrushes and dildos, but honestly, there's no real way to tell, and predicting the specifics of a higher phase communist society is a bit like the ancient Greeks trying to tell what capitalism might look like a few thousand years into the future. Now, you do sometimes get the argument that in a society with labor vouchers, black markets would naturally form and people would just start trading between themselves, circumventing the system anyway. But to really look into that, you need to look into the incentives for trading this to begin with. It would only ever be if someone could attain a good for less labor than if they would through the labor voucher system. But then you need to look at the person who's actually trading this good. Why are they trading it? Where did they attain it from? They'd either attain it from making it themselves, or they would have bought it through the labor voucher system themselves anyway. In the former case, if they're trading it on for cheaper than you can get through labor vouchers, why don't they just exchange that in for labor vouchers themselves? And in the latter, they're still making a loss because they had to buy it with labor vouchers and then they're trading it for less than its labor voucher worth. So there's just no rational reason to actually do this. Of course, that doesn't mean people aren't going to be irrational, but on a grand scale, on the whole economy, we're not going to see any problems like that. It's also worth noting that the idea of labor vouchers would be infinitely easier than it would have been when Marx described them in his time, and that's simply because of technology. Even now we have the concepts of walking into shops and picking things up without even having to technically pay directly for them, and it's all automatic. You know, and the ideas of like electronic labor vouchers as well simplifies the whole thing. You could even start to bound the labor vouchers by name so that they're not accumulable anymore, and only the person who's actually done the labor can exchange these labor vouchers in for goods. Really, technology alone being as advanced as it is now leads from many possibilities with labor vouchers on how they could be infinitely more convenient. However, again, we're never really going to know the specifics on how this is done without actually living in that society ourselves. And, well, I mean, the revolution is due any day now, but I can't be too sure. But anyways, I hope you guys did enjoy this video. I recommend linking it to all your right-wing friends who don't understand labor vouchers. Hopefully they will after this. If you have any questions about anything, do leave it in the comments. Of course, like or dislike if you didn't like the video. If you didn't like the video, that's fine. Just dislike it, and that's all right. And comment and subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Do all of that stuff because I do appreciate it. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and yeah, I'll see you all next time.